Inheriting a mansion uncovered dark secrets and a mummified body. But the closer I get to the truth, the more I realize the danger lies not just in the past. The shadows of dawn barely pierced the windows of what I had once thought would be a grand estate, now revealed as a foreboding haunted labyrinth. With the ancient door freshly pried open, I was greeted by darkness, thicker than any I'd ever known. An oppressive silence wrapped around me, curling into my throat like unwanted hands. My heart raced as I took tentative steps into the room, nostrils assaulted by the suffocating scent of age and rot, curling my stomach into knots. I had come here determined to uncover the treasures of my inheritance, but now I faced an unholy discovery. Laying sprawled beneath layers of grime and dusty sheets was the mummified body of a woman, eyes hollow and skin drawn tightly against the bones, as if death itself had conspired to preserve her in indifference. I gasped, my pulse thudding loudly in my ears, drowning out reason and logic as the truth of her presence settled in like a weight crashing down upon my chest. Sophie, with her usual vibrancy dulled by the grisly sight that greeted us, stepped forward as if compelled by a force we both felt but couldn't articulate. Her fingers trembled at her sides for a moment before she steeled herself, stepping into the room, a historian's curiosity igniting behind her warm brown eyes. "Emily, this can't just be a coincidence. We have to find out who she is." Her voice broke slightly, the gravity of our find capturing the emotions swirling in the air like a storm threatening to unleash its fury. There has to be something, some clue that can unravel this mystery. Her determination ignited a flame of fresh resolve within me. It was infuriating that I had inherited not just this mansion, but the torrent of questions and unearthly secrets that it housed. Injustice lingering like the moldering scent wafting through the air. But as the situation started spiraling into a chaotic form of discovery, each revelation birthed new outrage. Where had she come from? Why had she ended up here, trapped like some forgotten relic? I could feel the resentment bubbling like a pot about to boil over. My fingers itched against the rough wooden frame as I imagined Lucas Whitmore, the insufferably arrogant neighbor with his condescending smirk, brushing this tragedy aside while he paraded around in his tailored suits, flaunting a lifestyle built on privilege. This was the same man who had offered unsolicited advice about maintaining the mansion, as if he had any understanding of the weight I now carried. I would not allow him to belittle this discovery. "We have to do something about this, Sophie. We can't just let it remain a secret. It's injustice." My voice cracked with raw emotion, the anger of a woman thrust into a waking nightmare. Fueled by a potent mix of indignation and relentless fury, I paced the room, desperate for something tangible to anchor my outrage to. The air was thick with the unspoken stories of those who had come before. Each corner held a whisper of lives dismantled, as if each dusty relic mocked my ignorance. I spotted books pushed hastily against the walls, their spines cracked with age, and I flicked the cover of one open, revealing yellowed pages that felt like they had been burdened with so many secrets it threatened to crumble under my fingertips. Notes scribbled in the margins flickered memories of forgotten names. Could the answers to this woman's fate be hidden inside these chaotic thoughts? A frenzy to sift through the debris swallowed me whole, beckoning me further into the maze of my ancestors' unchanged past, with Sophie at my side. As our investigation deepened, I began to glimpse horrifying truths. The past wasn't merely dead, it was rotting with resentment. The local historians I tried to glean information from treated my inquiries dismissively, the bureaucratic indifference oozing from their rigid conversations like a rancid odor. "It's not like you would have any leads or claims on this," one had snubbed with a dismissive wave, his elder hands encrusted still with the grasp of authority. "You'd be better off cleaning it all out." I felt the visceral outrage that clenched my heart tighten, urging me to step beyond the shallow decency of politeness. How dare they? How dare they dismiss the monumental presence of a soul left behind, an echoing injustice that begged to be resurrected? In that moment, my focus shifted. There was nothing left to hide behind, no social niceties to shield me. I felt the adrenaline surge through me, igniting a fervor I didn't know existed within. I would go to the town hall, demand answers, throw my naivety in their faces. They had warned me of the mansion's history, but I had no idea the depth of it. The stories that had been forgotten and buried alongside that body, they weren't just hers, they were mine now. I could already sense the storm ahead, emboldened by the whispers of indignation, heightened by the dawning realization that perhaps, in confronting the past, I could reclaim justice for a life silenced for too long. The adventure had transformed, now darkness and danger intertwining with palpable fury, and I would not cower, but rather surge forth. The grotesque turn of events had become a war cry, demanding justice not just for the nameless victim, but also for every shred of humanity that had been cast aside. "We're going to find out everything," I whispered fervently to Sophie, more to myself than anything. With lightning flashing in my bright green eyes, I stepped out of that dismal room, ready to walk into the heart of the storm brewing ahead. Change was coming. An eruption of the past clawing its way forward. A reckoning awaited. And I felt that the answers lay just beyond the horizon. Could the truth be the very instrument to unleash this long-dormant fury? It was time to confront Lucas Whitmore, the insufferable neighbor whose pompous demeanor was a gavel echoing my unrelenting fury. I could feel my insides churning like a boiling cauldron as I recalled his dismissive remarks, the mocking laughter that reverberated in my mind like a warped echoing in the empty mansion halls. His arrogance, traversing from a mere annoyance to an affront to my very existence, fueled my determination. I envisioned standing before him, the room thick with tension, demanding he explain how he could possibly dismiss the horrors simmering just behind the mansion's doors. How dare he express entitlement over my inheritance while I wrestled with the truth that lay buried in its shadows? I gritted my teeth, knowing that a confrontation was not just necessary, it was inevitable. Before I could give myself the chance to chicken out, I texted Sophie, "We need to corner Louis today. I can't let him wander around thinking we're just clueless kids in inherited gowns." The seconds passed like hours, anxiety buzzing in my veins like electricity. My phone vibrated back in seconds. "You're right. Let's meet at the cafe and brew a plan in the process. Lucas needs to feel the weight of what he's neglected and dismissed." A wave of resolve surged me forward. Sophie's unwavering support reaffirmed that this was a battle I could not face alone. Our bond was the beacon cutting through the fog of this darkness. As we stepped into the cafe later that afternoon, the scent of coffee mingled with the aroma of fresh pastries, a stark contrast to the squalor we had unearthed just hours before. With each sip, I leaned in closer to Sophie, glasses perched precariously upon her nose. Her fingers wrapped around her cup like a shield as we strategized the possible unraveling of Lucas's tightening grip on his self-righteous attitude. What if we catch him off guard? Present him the question directly about the history of the mansion and that poor woman. If we make it clear we deserve answers, it might render him speechless. Just the thought made my chest heave with adrenaline and anticipation. I felt powerful, like a gambler poised on the brink of an epic wager. My chance in this game of authority, against a man reeking of privilege. That evening, twilight draped itself across the mansion like a mourning veil. Lucas's home loomed nearby, its manicured gardens a jarring spectacle against the decrepit backdrop of my inherited nightmare. The anticipation was a vice wrapping tighter around my heart as I led Sophie toward the white picket fence, separating our worlds. "Are you ready for this?" she asked, her voice a calming force against the storm brewing inside me. I nodded, breathing deeply, feeling a shift in the atmosphere as if the mansion itself aligned with my intentions. With each stride toward his door, the anger coiled visibly around me, igniting every ounce of tension in the air. This was a confrontation that had long been brewing, and if Lucas thought he could brush aside the shadows of our shared history, he was sorely mistaken. The doorbell rang, and the sound echoed through the stillness like a battle cry. I could hear shuffling inside before Lucas finally revealed himself, tilting his head slightly as if to question, "To what do I owe this dubious honor?" His eyes swirled with disdain as he paused momentarily, dismissive like a bored aristocrat. I pressed forward, a new liquid steel coursing through my veins, rattling with righteous anger. "We need to talk about the body we found in the mansion," I blurted out, each word punctuated with a ferocity of emotions unleashed. "Who was she? How could this happen right under your nose?" I braced myself for a barrage of condescension or annoyance, fully prepared to rebut whatever silence he tried to fill the air with. Lucas's expression flickered for an instant, disbelief wrought with a hint of unease crossing his sleek face. "Look, Emily, such unfortunate discoveries are part of the past," he began, smooth as a knife gliding through butter. "You don't need to rattle loose skeletons just to settle into your new life. Just let bygones be bygones." The words sparked an inferno within me. How could he presume I would allow such an injustice to slide past as if it were a triviality? How detached could someone be? I felt the walls of the room closing in, threatening to suffocate me as I responded. "You're talking about a human being. A life that was taken, hidden in a dark corner for what? To protect your quiet little neighborhood from the truth." My heart thudded in my chest, every accusation a movement against the immovable force of indifference that Lucas commanded. His icy blue eyes narrowed, and with a wave of his hand, he nodded dismissively. "You're making a fool of yourself, Emily," he declared, leaning forward like a predator swooping in on the vulnerable. "Nothing good can come from dragging up this history. People leave things buried for a reason." Every word dripped with condescension and privilege, igniting a firestorm of indignation within me. "No, Lucas. What's foolish is thinking you can dictate the value of a life, a story that is as much mine now as it is yours. This isn't just about you or your facade. This is about the legacy left in that room." The urgency in my voice gave strength to my resolution. I wouldn't allow a man like him to shatter my fight for justice, nor the voice of a forgotten soul to be silenced again. Would Lucas finally realize the power of accountability and truth, or would he smirk, convinced he could walk away unscathed? The reckoning was just beginning. In the suffocating tension of the room, I could almost hear the heartbeat of the mansion itself, thrumming in sync with the outrage that pulsed through my veins. Lucas leaned back against the doorframe, the slickness of his tailored suit epitomizing his detachment from the horrors surrounding him. I replayed his dismissive remarks over in my head, each repetition sharpening my resolve, a reservoir of fury ready to overflow. Why was he treating my outrage as if it were a nuisance, an unwelcome intruder in his pristine life? The chilling realization settled deep within me. He saw the hidden truths as dangerous, and maybe, just maybe, he had more to hide than he would dare admit. My stare bore into him, filled with a fury that promised no retreat. I was no longer a naive girl intimidated by his grand illusions. This was a fight that no amount of privilege could overshadow. He straightened up slightly, as though my intensity might truly penetrate his shield of arrogance. "You're young and impulsive, Emily," he countered, his tone edging toward condescension. "You don't understand the complexities of our community. Digging up these past grievances only disturbs a peace that's been carefully curated." My insides twisted into knots, each word dripping with the kind of entitlement that made my skin crawl. Curated peace? More like buried truths. What about the family history linked to this mansion that had overtaken my life? What about the woman whose cries had faded into oblivion while he maintained a grip over the neighborhood narratives, smothering any whispers of wrongdoings with stale rhetoric? His indifference was a slap in the face that fueled my determination even further. I refused to be complacent in this charade. A life was taken, and I have a responsibility to unearth the truth, for her sake, if not for my own. Lucas's expression turned steely, the mask of politeness slipping to reveal a predator readying for an attack. "You think you can just waltz into this world and challenge what's been established?" The undercurrent of menace in his voice fanned the flames of my anger, igniting sparks of long-simmering rage. Who did he think he was, standing in the way of justice with his hollow threats? I stepped closer, defiant, stamping out his attempts to intimidate me. "No, Lucas, I don't think. I know that those who took lives cannot simply erase them without consequence. Your established world is built upon crumbling foundations of secrets, and it is only a matter of time before the truth claws its way out." The intensity of the moment wrapped around me like thick fog, suffocating yet charged with the hope of redemption. Amidst the growing chaos of our confrontation, Sophie's voice rang out like a lifeline. "Emily's right, Lucas. You might have convinced the town to overlook these tragedies, but the more you hide, the more that suffocating silence will tear at your carefully woven facade." Her determination infused the room with newfound energy, pushing against Lucas's imposing presence. I saw the flicker of uncertainty in his icy blue eyes, and I pressed on. You don't own the history, Lucas, not just because you inhabit the best house on the block. You are merely the guardian of a wicked legacy, one that has marked this ground in blood, and I intend to uncover every ugly truth. The weight of those cursed words echoed in the air, chipping away at the indifference surrounding us like brittle glass, ready to shatter. Lucas's facade began to crack. The contempt melted away, revealing a glimmer of fear shadowed beneath the bravado. You have no idea what you're threatening, he hissed, but even his voice shook as he spoke, betraying a glimpse of the vulnerability lurking behind his polished exterior. In that moment, I recognized I had struck a chord. He feared exposure, and that gave me power. If your comforts depend on burying this truth, then maybe you need to reflect on your priorities, I countered, emboldened by the support of Sophie standing resolutely by my side. People deserve to know the stories of those lost to darkness, and if you think you can silence me, then you've gravely misunderstood my resolve. With each accusation, I felt the resolve coalescing inside my chest, an unyielding strength forged in the furnace of righteous fury. Enough, Lucas shouted, his voice reverberating against the walls, stained with frustration. He took a step back, nursing that same fear. You think you're some kind of crusader? Trust me, the past is best left forgotten. Snarling through gritted teeth, he declared, Appleton's nothing but a quaint little town. Its troubles don't concern people like you. You'll only stir the pot of trouble you've inherited, I confidently retorted. But truth does matter. It is our responsibility to face those very troubles and fight for those who can't speak for themselves. That includes the woman who deserves a name and legacy. The defiance escaping my lips felt like a rallying cry for a buried history, and I refused to retreat. I could sense the room stifling under the weight of our shared turmoil, a generational wound waiting to be uncovered. Would his desperation lead to more threats, or was the universe finally tipping in favor of the unsettled? The silence hung thick, and the battle of wills surged around us as I took a deep breath, grounding myself in that space of confrontation. I could see the battle within him, his ambitions clashing with a rapidly approaching reckoning. So, what do you suggest? Lucas finally asked, a hint of surrender glimmering through the defiance etched upon his face. You think it's simple to expose this? Who do you think you'll believe you can convince? Gazing into his stormy eyes, I seized the moment, filled with determination. Believe in history. Rally behind humanity. We will bend fate. Our inheritance isn't just a house, Lucas. It's an unsealed cry for justice. It was as if the night stilled around us, waiting to witness the fallout. Would he join this reluctant dance with destiny? Or would he continue to stand as an obstacle in a tale far larger than either of us? My heart raced as I watched Lucas's piercing blue eyes flicker, an inkling of uncertainty glistening amidst the mask of arrogance he had worn for too long. I felt the tension in the air crackle, not just from the words exchanged, but from the shifting landscape of power between us. This was a man who believed himself invincible, whose authority had long been unchallenged in the intricacies of Appleton. Yet here I was, a woman barely finding her footing in the remnants of a haunted estate, challenging an entire history of oppression, as if it were a decree laid out before me. You speak of peace, I shot back, my anger barely contained. But your so-called peace comes at the price of silence. Only the dead can sleep easy in a graveyard of the forgotten. I let that simmer for a beat, the stakes heightening as he grappled with my words and the weight of implication behind them. The whispers around us crackled with life as Sophie stepped forward, her vibrant aura a stark contrast to the oppressive gloom cast by Lucas's demeanor. Emily's right, and if you think your position can protect you from this reckoning, you're sorely mistaken, she added, her warm brown eyes now alight with conviction. Your so-called peace is merely a bandage you've placed over the festering wounds of history, and we demand to peel it back. The conviction in her voice buoyed me, creating a tide that swelled against the rotted foundations we were confronting. Seeing the effects of our confrontation echoed in the rigid lines of Lucas's face, I knew we were onto something vital. More than family secrets intertwined with wealth, this was about exposing the marrow of injustice. That's all this has ever been to you, Lucas gritted out, frustration and anger contorting his flawless features. "You view me as the villain in this tale, an embodiment of everything wrong in the world." His voice cracked, vulnerability spilling into the equation, like cracks slowly forming in an ageless foundation. "But what makes you think you can truly grasp the implications of what you are trying to dig up? What if your findings destroy these lives, including your own?" A dangerous edge to his words prickled the air, and my defenses shot up like spines on a porcupine. I could sense the menace looming, the chilling air wrapping itself around our battle, echoing threats and histories lost. But I was ready to confront them all. "A life was extinguished, Lucas," I proclaimed, my voice slicing through the tension, each syllable charged with the weight of grief. "This isn't just about you or your pristine existence. It's about recognizing those whose voices have been silenced." My insides twisted into knots of emotion, a concoction of determination and the bitter taste of injustice. Anger tightened my fists, refusing to bow to his intimidation tactics. If the cost of comfort is a burial of truth, then maybe it's time we forced open the coffin of silence. Families like yours have thrived on secrets. It's time for you to realize the consequences of those buried lives. The room trembled with unspoken fears, his of exposure and mine of the unknown lurking behind the sealed walls of the mansion. Sophie's animated gestures flowed in harmony with my own, augmenting our shared fervor. "Every corner of this town echoes with secrets, Lucas. You cannot expect to silence curiosity forever," she thundered, her confidence rippling through the atmosphere like a surging wave. "Appleton deserves to know the shadows trailing behind it, the mummified body we discovered, and the stories long buried." Lucas faltered, absorbing the tidal wave of our combined outrage. He was a man forged from privilege, his entitlement burning brightly. Yet in this moment, I saw the slight faltering of that confident front. Beneath the polished surface of his tailored suits, chinks in his armor began to surface. Could it be that the fabric of his life was as layered with deceit as the mansion that loomed before us, harboring its sordid past? Lucas hesitated, and I seized the moment to drive the stake of truth deeper, pushing through the cracks that had started to fracture his stoic demeanor. "You think you can scare me off this path, Lucas?" I pressed, refusing to back down. "Do you believe your threats can erase the pain that woman felt as her life was extinguished? The justice that remains unserved? I may be just a young woman blocking your path, but every step I take towards the truth is a step forward for everyone who has been wronged." The glare I shot him burned with intensity, daring him to challenge the very core of my declaration. The stakes had shifted. We were no longer circling each other in a war of words, but engaging in a reckoning, one that sparked the ire buried in our community. "Who do you think you are?" he retorted, his arrogance temporarily tempered by frustration. "You're playing a dangerous game, Emily. There are forces at play beyond your comprehension." But with every intonation of his voice, I recognized the tremble of fear. Beneath the bravado lay the tremors of a man aware of the sins anchoring him in the past, afraid that one stir of the earth might bury him instead. "You may not know me yet," I replied, my voice imbued with a defiance that surged as fear digested his uncertainty. "But today is the day I stop cowering in someone else's shadow. If your precious balance is threatened, it's time to realize that truth will always take its rightful place, above lies." The challenge hung there, suspended between us, like a blade ready to fall. I could sense the fury uncoiling within me, a relentless force demanding justice as my heart raced. Every insult hurled my way only steeled my resolve thicker and stronger. Would he break? Would he risk it all to maintain an illusion? Or would he finally bend to the will of the truth that yearned for the light? We stood at a crossroads, the past clawing its way back into the light, a confrontation designed to shake the very foundations of Appleton. What would it take to finally echo cries of justice across that town? And how tenaciously would we all fight for what was right? The air crackled with unspoken tension as Lucas and I squared off, my refusal to back down igniting a fire within me that had stagnated for far too long. The specter of the mummified body in the sealed room loomed large, a stark reminder of the darkness entrenched in the history of our town. I could almost feel its hollow eyes pressing upon us, desperate for justice, and I found myself questioning what sacrifices I was willing to undertake for every soul silenced by privilege and wealth. This isn't just about the past, I declared, casting a sweeping glance around us, the faces of the townsfolk emerging from the shadows to stand beside me. It's about the future and the legacy we leave behind. This town deserves reclamation from the hands of those who think they can shackle us with silence. The fury surging through me transformed into a powerful drumbeat that echoed in the hearts of those gathered, a summons to rise up, to demand accountability once and for all. Sophie stepped forward, her vibrant spirit barely contained. Emily's right. This isn't just a private family matter. You've used your wealth and status to bury the truth, Lucas, but secrets have a way of clawing back to the surface. Her voice rang out with infectious confidence, the warmth igniting within me like a flame that could not be extinguished. Every misstep you take to suppress this only fans the flames of revolt and ensures that the past won't be swept away. Walls built upon lies and deception today could just as easily crumble tomorrow. Each proclamation was met with murmurs of agreement and determination rippling through the crowd. What began as mere curiosity about an estate soon transformed into a rallying cry against the very foundations of oppression, galvanizing a community starved for truth and justice. I could feel hope surging as those around us stood taller, our shared outrage a power that could no longer be contained. The facade Lucas wore rippled and fractured with each challenge thrown his way, the polished veneer chipping away to reveal a man acutely aware of the ghosts he had conjured. His typical arrogance morphed into defensiveness, words tumbling from his mouth like desperate, drowning cries in murky waters. "You're playing a dangerous game, Emily. These whispers you awaken may consume you. Do you realize the peril of what you're endeavoring to expose?" The absurd timbre of his threatening tone sent a surge of anger through me, igniting memories of injustices I had seen unfold. I noticed the shifting weight of the gathered townspeople, a subtle but noticeable closing of ranks as allies among us aligned, their once timid features transforming into steely resolve. The battle was no longer between me and Lucas, but a transformative clash of ideals, a conviction that interconnected us all as we sought to wrest control from his grip and reclaim our rightful narrative. "Isn't it fascinating how you think you can hold power over lives?" I retorted, my voice resolute as I clutched Sophie's arm, a reminder of the bond we shared in this struggle. "Your threats only highlight your desperation and ignorance. We are not afraid." The heat of my fury burned away the weight of indecision that had shadowed me too long, each syllable bolstering my courage as I realized what lay at stake. This is a battle for truth, not just ours, but for every family impacted by this mansion and the deadly secrets it hides. You wielded your wealth like a shield, but those days are over. Our search for answers will uncover what your power tried to bury. The words hung heavy in the air, buoyed by righteous fury, igniting a fervor in the crowd that swelled like waves crashing upon a sturdy shore, eager to reshape the contours of their reality. As Lucas grappled with his unraveling composure, I caught sight of the townsfolk behind me, their expressions a medley of resolve and hope. A murmur spread through the crowd, a potent blend of frustration at past injustices and a yearning for justice. Their willingness to confront Lucas reinforced my resolve. Each heartbeat reverberated through my chest, mirroring the urgency of the task ahead. We were on the brink of not just unearthing the mansion's secrets, but transforming Appleton itself into a bastion of truth and integrity. I could feel the weight of history resting upon my shoulders as the hope of our community surged to the forefront of my mind. "Join us," I cried out, my voice resonating with the fervor of conviction. "Join us in this pursuit of truth. Help us dismantle the chains of silence that have long fettered us. If we don't rise together, what greater legacy shall we leave behind except the shadows of the unclaimed?" The excitement and determination in the air intensified, igniting a wave of chanting and stomping, a movement born from the very fibers of our community that swelled and beckoned for recognition. No more silence. No more secrets. The electric energy was palpable, our grievances merging into a mighty surge that broke through the apathy that had long plagued Appleton. I turned back to Lucas, whose face was now etched in a combination of disbelief and fear. realization dawning upon him that his fortress was crumbling under the weight of reluctant alliance. You thought we would cower? That your intimidation would silence us? Hope is now our weapon, and truth is rising from its slumber. You cannot suffocate what refuses to die. My heart pounded like a war drum, each beat echoing a fierce demand for justice that could no longer be contained within the confines of fear and silence. Despite Lucas's desperate attempts to maintain control, the fervor of the crowd only tightened, eager to face the injustice buried in secrecy. The air was thick with anticipation, and I felt a sense of unity blossoming around us, the kind that could rally the souls of the forgotten against the long-standing injustice represented by Lucas's calculated demeanor. Lucas, that invincible figure to so many, appeared like a trapped animal with nowhere to retreat. The confirmed tide of vengeance and indignation pooled dangerously close, and with that realization bubbled a reckless yet comforting thought. This was just the beginning. Together we stood on the precipice of a tangible shift, a real movement to expose the tangled truth. With determination coursing through my entire being, I would not yield to societal pressures, bureaucratic deception, or even fear itself, not when the vindicated breath of those long gone beckoned me forth to claim my own destiny. Together, we will unearth what matters most, I whispered resolutely, the articulation of my vision igniting within me a fierce and transformative determination. As if on cue, the community surged forward, united in a purpose that dared to challenge an established order steeped in injustice, a force that sought to liberate the hidden narratives of those who had been left to rot in secret. The momentum transformed the gathered townsfolk, emboldening them to challenge the palpable inequities around us. A united front emerging from the stark shadows of an oppressive past. Appleton stood poised, and in that electric moment, I realized this was not just my battle, but our collective rebellion against the specters of oppression. Would we gather our strength and rage, propelling us toward an inevitable confrontation with those who thought themselves unassailable? The question led to uncertainty, and yet the resolve to break free surged within me, igniting flames ready to dance with fury and passion. The crowd surged forward, as if possessed by an unquenchable thirst for truth, the energy pulsating like a living heartbeat. I could hear the roar of our collective outrage rising and falling, echoing against the mansion's ancient stone walls, and the flames flickering from our torches danced wildly in the shadows. Each face in front of me wore a mask of determination, mothers clutching their children, men emptying the bottles of past injustices like discarded regrets, and elderly residents who had witnessed the tides of arrogance and suffering wash over Appleton for decades. It was a fierce embodiment of every unaddressed grievance and every whisper that had turned into a scream, and I knew deep within me that we were transcending mere protest. We were rewriting the narrative of our lives. For too long, we've let fear dictate our voices. Tonight, we reclaim our power. Are you with us? My voice split the night, igniting an inferno of agreement, their cheers reverberating back in fierce affirmation. But as quickly as the excitement rose, so did the tension. The very air grew thick with anticipation and unease. From my peripheral vision, I spotted Lucas retreating slightly, his expression shifting towards something darker. The entitlement that had once defined him now seemed to fracture under the weight of escalating fury. It became clear to me. Lucas wasn't just fighting for his reputation. He was defending a legacy built upon exploitation and unbridled greed. The thought pressed heavily upon my heart as hatred permeated his gaze, and I silently vowed not to let him suffocate our momentum with threats born of desperation. "No more predatory silence!" I bellowed, gesturing passionately towards the solemn shadows around us, where the echoes of past lives demanded recognition. We owe it to all those who've suffered under the cruelty of wealth and power. We owe it to that mummified soul, and to the families who were broken in the shadows. Let those who've wronged us quake in their boots. As my voice resonated in the cool night air, Lucas stepped forward, interrupting my fervor with a venomous sneer that could cut glass. "Do you honestly think this is about them?" he spat, venom dripping off each word, leaving an acrid taste of contempt in its wake. "This is about you pretending to be something you're not. You think you're brave? You're a fool, Emily." All you are doing is opening floodgates that should never be breached." His icy confidence was beginning to shatter. I could see it in the twitch of his jaw and the narrowing of his eyes. And while he belittled me, pride began pouring through the cracks in my facade of fear. Each insult felt like an arrow missing its mark, forcing my anger to adapt and grow even more potent. If being brave means fighting against unearned privilege and injustice, I'll wear the title proudly. What else would you prefer? Silence as a badge of shame? My challenge hung in the air, echoing with clarity amongst the crowd. Everyone understood the stakes of our contested struggle. Around me, the energy brimmed at a tipping point. Shouts of determination erupted from the assembled townsfolk, fierce and unyielding, rallying against the taunts that had kept us shackled for far too long. We refused to be intimidated. We refused to live in shadows. The voices of our people entwined, forming an unwavering mantra that pushed Lucas deeper into his cocoon of bitterness. This wasn't just a moment of anger. It was a redefining shift for all of us, emboldening even those who had stayed silent for years. I turned back to face the mansion, the very structure that had held secrets and lies behind its grand facade, and I felt the wicked shadows of its history creeping closer with every passing second. To lay bare your skeletons, Lucas, for the pain this mansion has amassed, I challenged, my voice hardly more than a firm vibrato through clenched teeth. Just as Lucas's expression twisted with indignation, I felt Sophie squeeze my arm, a small but potent reminder of our symbiotic strength. She leaned in, her voice barely a whisper yet infused with the passion and resolve that had brought us to this very moment. "Emily, we need to turn this into action. Words alone won't unearth the truth. The sealed room is our next step." My heart surged at the prospect of uncovering the mansion's darkest secrets, beckoning forward with a ferocity I had long suppressed. The stories we had heard whispered among the townsfolk, the lives lost to the unfathomable cruelty of the wealthy family. Tonight, we would draw upon them as fuel to forge our path of reclamation. I nodded resolutely in agreement, feeling the collective heartbeat of our community synchronize with a newfound purpose, thrumming against the pulse of injustice that had haunted us for generations. "Then let us march together," I cried, hoping to channel the intensity of our gathering into action, urging them forward like a tidal wave of righteousness. The pounding of feet against the pavement echoed a rhythmic drumbeat, commanding the attention of every resident within earshot. As we approached the mansion's entrance, the shadows of the night seemed to conspire with us. With each step we take, we value every forgotten story and fight for every unclaimed life. Let's crack open the sins of this place. Let's push through to the sealed room and expose the secrets the wealthy sought to bury. The intensity of our march carried us toward an uncertain yet electrifying confrontation with the past. How long had it been since we, the neglected townsfolk, had dared to claim our power? Would this determined push toward truth usher in the justice we desperately sought? We reached the mansion's threshold, where the history that lived just beneath its veneer seemed to breathe along with us. My heart raced as I shuffled through the memories of the day Sophie and I stumbled across the mummified body, an emblem of twisted fate and an echo of lives taken for granted. In my gut, I felt a whirlwind of fear and resolve coalesce. Tonight, we would pry open the door of history, the door that Lucas had believed would eternally remain bolted shut. The air buzzed with suspense and anticipation as whispers curled around our collective breath, memories mixing with the furnace of our shared indignation. "For those who can't fight any longer," I urged as I pushed forward, my voice a resolute force, urging us to step across that threshold of the unknown. Our alliance was forged in the fury of the past, and together there was nothing that could hold us back as we propelled ourselves into our fight for justice, truth, and the lives that deserved recognition. Would we finally be able to break the curse of silence that had long haunted Appleton? As we stood before the looming facade of the mansion, its once grand appearance now felt like a grim specter wearing a mask of age-old arrogance. The weight of generations pressed down on my shoulders, each brick steeped in silenced cries, each window bearing witness to tragedy and betrayal. This house was never just a structure. It had become a prison for the truth, a mausoleum for secrets. Our confrontation was essential, not merely for us, but for every voice, stifled by the oppressive thumb of privilege. "We have the power to peel back the layers of this facade," I shouted, the chill of the night air invigorating my resolve. My heart thundered in my chest, pulsating with the collective fury of my companions. The mansion loomed overhead, and I wondered whether it feared the revelation of its own history as much as we did. With each determined step toward the heavy double doors, I recalled snippets of the unsettling discoveries that had marked our journey. The chilling, mummified body locked away in the shadows, the hollow chamber that spoke of lives extinguished to protect a family's tarnished name. This wasn't just a fight for justice for that individual. It was a reckoning for all those who had endured similar fates, their stories forgotten, their cries suppressed. A wave of solidarity surged through me as I caught Sophie's eye. Her fierce determination mirrored my own. Together, we had scaled the mountains of despair, and the summit felt tantalizingly close. "We've done research," I continued, my voice infused with adrenaline. "We have what we need. Tonight, we will expose every villain who believed their wealth could shield them from accountability." The air crackled with tension as we flung wide the mansion doors, creaking ominously under the pressure of our collective will. We surged within, the shadows struggling to recoil from our luminous spirit. Torches flickered to life, illuminating the dust particles dancing through the cold air, and the forgotten artifacts that seemed to gaze back at us, yearning for their stories to be heard. With Sophie by my side, I led the group deeper into the echoing expanse, my mind racing with the knowledge that we were not just here to confront, but to dismantle the very core of the malignant arrogance that had thrived within these walls. "Let's find that sealed room," I declared, my eyes tracing the contours of the dim hallways, like a cartographer marking uncharted territory. The mist of past injustices enveloped us. It whispered in tones that had long been stifled. Our footsteps reverberated through the halls as we navigated the labyrinthine corridors, every creak and groan sounding like the house itself, lamenting the chaos we were unleashing. The mansion, with its portraits lined along the walls, each face a grim reminder of the lineage that had turned a blind eye to suffering, seemed to bend and sway under the weight of its own secrets. Sophie paused to examine one of the paintings, her eyes flaring with indignation. "These people thought they were untouchable," she scoffed, her voice low yet charged, "that their wealth could blacken the truths that their ancestors buried." The realization lit a fire in me. The arrogance embodied in those portraits had to be challenged. Each silent gaze had demanded accountability. Ours was the confrontation they could not foresee. After what felt like an eternity of searching, we found ourselves at the threshold of a heavy wooden door, its carvings ancient and cryptic. It stood resolute, a bulwark against the truth that lay behind it. "This is it," I murmured, my hands trembling with the gravity of the moment. Each heartbeat echoed those of generations who had suffered quietly, their pain a relentless chorus beneath our footsteps. Lucas's insidious presence felt like a vulture lurking in the wings, circling, waiting for us to stumble. "Tonight, he won't silence us," I affirmed, shaking off the creeping tendrils of doubt. The keys of the past lay within our grasp, and this room would reveal the tapestry of betrayal that had seeped into the very foundation of our lives. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open with ferocious determination, the friction between our desire for liberation and the mansion's defenses palpable in the air. As the door creaked open, a musty wave engulfed us like the tainted breath of history, the stark contrast of a burgeoning truth against the pervasive silence that had suffocated so many. Inside, the room was devoid of light, but rich with memories. Crumbling walls whispered stories of despair long obscured by the meticulous upkeep of the mansion's aesthetics. Shadows flitted around us as we illuminated the confines with our flickering torches, revealing rotting furniture, shattered mirrors, and hushed remnants that clung desperately to the past. In the center lay an object wrapped in tarnished velvet. A shiver ran down my spine as I approached, heart racing in synchrony with the urgency of our quest. "What if this is it?" Sophie whispered, her voice almost reverent, as we approached the heart of the millions of truths waiting to burst forth. With a ragged breath, I tore away the faded fabric, revealing a grim object encased within, a tarnished locket containing photographs that mirrored despair in the eyes of faces I had never seen, yet felt linked to. An aura of recognition washed over me, the weight of our discoveries crashing like waves against the shores of aristocratic arrogance. "These are people who mattered," I cried, slamming the remnants of the locket on the makeshift table before us, the resonance sharp and clear. "They fought battles we will now continue." In that moment, the tension in the air shifted. The fragile silence cracked wide open as the collective energy surged, igniting pink flames against the darkness. We would not only bring light to our findings, we would demand that their legacy was honored. We were ready to forge a new narrative, not just for us, but for all who had been devalued. Would this be the pivotal moment that turned the tides of injustice cascading through history?